Here she is.
Someone to love me right. That would be very nice. Someone to
You
understand
know,
Astrucci effecto.
me.
some people would hear some of her understated vocal stylings and say, "Tell me, can she sing, or she can she sing? Is she singing?" I've never heard a vocalist like that. It's so laid back. It's so off the beat. It's so almost flat. It's so relaxed. It's so bossa nova. What does it mean? Is she talented? What is this music supposed to make me do?
Well,
Dance a little?
as a young man, I immediately figured out what this music was supposed to make me do.
9 years
Uh,
old, Vinny was hit like a thunderbolt.
yeah, I heard "Girl from Ipanema," and I was into rock and roll from a very, very young age. The mechanics at my father's gas station always listened to it, and so that's what you picked up on. My father listened to elevator music, but this was different, and this was different than anything you had heard before. It was well, number one, it was jazz. They were playing jazz on on top
Right.
40 stations. But number two, there was a sexiness about her voice. It was the first time I think that me, as a music fan, or growing into a music fan, ever realized that music could be sexy, could be seductive, could be I don't know, maybe even one of my favorite movies of the day. It's a mad, bad, bad, bad world where Dick Shawn is in the apartment with the bikini model doing the dance. The music is still like not sexy music. It's
No,
you know, you know,
it's annoying music.
yeah, it's annoying. It's they're trying to make it, but you're realizing that scene, and this music, that he would be able to kiss that girl if he played this song.
I remember how cool the presentation was by Verve Records of all their Latin American music. But it wasn't just Latin American. There's a key came through the door with Getz and Gilberto. Stan Getz, very American. João Gilberto, very Brazilian. And Getz got attracted to his music, I guess, because he was a composer. And he said, we should do something together. And when they did, they brought Charlie Bird, the guitarist, and you gotta have a Brazilian drummer because in bossa nova it may sound easy, but if your drummer can't play it, you're in a world of hurt because it's bop, dum, bop,
Right.
bop. Then you miss one. What happened to that one? We left it behind. Watch out for the next one. It was a completely different beat, and they even wrote rock and roll songs about the bossa nova that weren't bossa nova. Blame
Right.
it on the
Blame it
bossa
on the
nova.
bossa nova, Edie Gourmet,
Yeah.
who was a great bossa nova artist.
Sure, she could have done that music. It was, the musicians loved it because it takes you, when you start a bossa nova song, the first thing that happens is you establish the beat. And once that's done, everybody's coming along.
What was the other one that was a hit? That was a kind of a bossa nova. Oh, Georgie Fame. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It had that.
And remember, Paul Anka tried something called Calypso for a while,
Yeah.
which was
Yes.
a Latin Caribbean beat.
And it was just it was. But this particular song, this girl from Ipanema, the music was done so well, but she sang it in such a descriptive and sexy manner that you could, even as a 10-year-old kid, could imagine this woman walking down to the beach, you know, and each time as she walks to the sea, she looks straight at him, not at her, not at me. It's that it was so descriptive that it touched
And,
your
and it
brain.
and it was hip, it was sexy, but it was also kind of forlorn. It was distant.
Yeah.
She was in a mood. What's wrong with you today? You're in a mood. You're so far away. And that's where she was when she sang that song.
Well, it was like a 10-year-old chances of having sex.
Yeah. Sad and forlorn.
Yeah, I mean, you heard about it, you knew about it, you were told about it in the schoolyard,
But
but
no,
and you even had, I mean, you had instances of looking at your teacher and going, but the reality was it wasn't happening for you yet. You were
not for
just
you.
you were just a bundle of I almost said a bundle of hemorrhoids, a bundle of hormones.
Same thing.
Yeah, ultimately, yes, right? Ultimately,
Well, it's funny that the Pope's in the hospital. Mike Pence is running. The murdering swine Arabs have bought the PGA. The world is getting ready to have meetings in China with the Secretary of State. And what do we lead with? Chris Lick being fired from CNN? No, we lead with Astro Gilberto because that was a time in history, and it was both musical and sociological that captured everybody's imagination. The bossa nova was a what's the word? Sensation for a while
yeah,
when
yeah.
those
It
records
was
came
it
out.
was in a world of dance trends and musical trends. It touched both. It touched that the dance kind of trend because everybody wanted to have. It wasn't quite Latin because it was Brazilian, but
Right.
yet it was fell into the South American kind of um, thing that had really happened, blew up in the 50s, really with Xavier Cugat and Desi Arnaz and several other of the Spanish, South American, and Central American band leaders.
And in the 60s, as music was erupting all over the place, the British invasion was underway. The Brill Building contributors were still hard at work. Brazil came up with its own music and they said, we got our own bag. What are you going to call it? We call it the new beat, bossa nova. Well, right away, what you're saying is we're leaving behind the old beat. Now here comes the new beat, and here's how we play this. And the musicians were very cool and talented. The delivery was extremely cool, and West Coast jazz was erupting at this time, and that was their whole thing. We're cooler than you. We're cooler
Yeah.
than you can ever be. And we're doing it with flugelhorns and flutes. Well,
Well,
okay.
and also, I think, and again, I was again only 10 years old when this was going on, but I still think that I was a fairly good observer of the world around me for 10 years old. What was going
Right.
on, and I also remember that where certain types of people who would not listen to black jazz music would listen to Latin and would listen to Brazilian and would listen to that kind of music because it wasn't black. You could get that record on the air in the South
Right.
and it would be okay. You wouldn't have the racist, the Klan, and everybody running up and down the street saying, "Oh my God, black music is taking over the world."
You know, you raise an interesting point. The music AM stations in New York could play bossa nova, could play Astor Gilberto as a hit up against Edie Gourmet or up against Walter Wonderly, up against Les Paul if they were playing that music. That's from a different era, however, bad combination. And they did it because the MOR stations, the middle of the road stations like KSFO and KFI, when they were looking for new hits that weren't rock and roll, so they had to look far and wide. And boom, bossa nova was a natural for them. It appealed to an upper demo, but a hip one.
Well, yeah, there was a universal appeal. It was a music that crossed a lot of different lines. You could play it, as you said, on an MOR station. You could play it on a rock and roll station as Spice. You could play it, in number. You could play it on that elevator music station.
Yeah,
You know,
you
I,
could
I
play it
mean,
on cable.
right? It was soft enough to to step into that and give you kind of something different, so you weren't playing the same old Bonneville strings all the time. You were playing something different.
like the
And
Jackie Gleason, like the Jackie Gleason Orchestra.
Right, exactly. We're talking about her, about Astrid Gilberto, because she passed away yesterday at the age of 84, I
80,
think.
83, I think.
Yeah, 83. And just an incredible voice who, um, as we said, crossed a lot of different genres, but yet stayed in a certain lane where her voice was recognizable. And I mean, she was favored by, you go across the board. I mean, the Beatles liked her, Frank Sinatra liked her, the rockers liked her. Wasn't anybody that didn't like um, that corner of the music world.
Well, she had this immediately identifiable. Of course, if you haven't heard it before, it's not immediately identifiable, but you won't forget it. She had a distinctive to the furthest elements of that descriptive word, a distinctive voice. You weren't going to mistake her for anybody else. There weren't two Astrid Gilbertos, like there weren't two Harry Nilssons. You hear Harry
Right.
Nilsson's voice and something special's happening. Her voice, what the singers love about it is, boom, she creates a mood in 2 seconds. First two words out of her mouth, you go, wait, what's this? Well, I've heard this song. I don't want to. Oh, what's going on? Yeah,
Yeah.
it takes you right along. It captures you with an immediate mood.
Yeah. It was just really, really beautiful stuff. And the great thing was is that guys like Sinatra and other, Reprise, especially. I mean, I know they recorded on Verve, but Sinatra got together with Jobim and others in that genre, and not that he was, I don't know, exceptional at it, but he delved into it. To his credit, he said, "I don't like that damn rock and roll, but this sounds pretty good.
He
I'll."
understood. He understood the jazz idea. He understood the complicated timing of the groove and how you sing across it. He understood all that because Frankie grew up in New Jersey. Certainly, he'd heard Latin music all his life.
Well, yeah, yeah, and you bring up a good point. Is he? We when we talk about Sinatra, sometimes we forget uh, what a musical genius he was. How he rewrote singing,
Yeah,
and how his phrasing and
phrasing,
how
phrasing.
his timing and his use of a way to extend a word or to emphasize a point in the middle of a word that you would never think a point would be emphasized in
Yeah, and he would do
was
that sometimes by improvising during the live recording.
yeah, yeah. I mean, he just really had a sense for that, um, that was maybe better, and of course, being hooked up with guys like Nelson Riddle and Quincy Jones and some of the best arrangers and producers.
There's a part of the music business that's pretty much gone, except for doing scores. It's like Sinatra shows up and goes, "Okay, we got 40 guys here. I don't know any of them. How are we going to get this turned to become a band? How can I record with this? Oh, the producer can't do it. We need somebody else, somebody between the band and you." And that's where the arrangers come from.
Right?
Arrangers writing pieces for all the different sections, writing leads for the solos, suggestions for intros and outros, how we're going to fade this thing. And it was all written down and all charted for them. Sometimes it was charted completely. Sometimes it was only a suggestion if the guys knew how to play together. And it was a fascinating part of the music business that, for the most part, Vinny, is very hard to find, even in Hollywood.
Right? I mean, you go back and you think about, um, would the Beatles have been the Beatles without George Martin?
No, they'd have been something else.
I mean, it'd have been a good rock and roll band, but it was the intricacies of the music that he understood, and understood how to take these four different voices and write something for them that would utilize them.
And he played
John,
he played along with him on the harpsichord, on the piano, writing
yeah,
string sections.
yeah, his, the vocal that he arranged for John on This Boy, is different when you listen to it. It's different than anything else John had done up to that time.
And listen to the intricacies of that harmony. It's
Yeah,
really, really extraordinary to hear.
Yeah, I mean, you can listen to that record 100 times, and 100 times you'll pick up on something that
Yep.
you hadn't heard before. That
Extraordinary three-part harmony.
Yeah, just just a little dab. And what always amazes me about those days is they weren't writing for $50,000 Macintosh systems. They were writing for a little speaker.
Actually, the BBC made their own machines back in those days, and they were selling them to EMI, and they were three-track machines with wider heads than the United States version. We have 3 tracks and 4 tracks, but it's a quarter-inch tape. It's got 4 tracks, 2 in each direction. Well, the BBs, the ones they used at EMI were wider, so the tracks were the same number, but they were actually more physical space for each track, and the fidelity increased. That's why those early recordings were so rudimentary at the same time that they were pristine. And it was all because there was increased fidelity that was inherent in the machines they were using.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff to me. I mean, stuff that doesn't get talked about a lot, unless unless you're taking a music class or something like that. But and it always, I mean, one of the things that amazed me about me is that at a young age I could pick up on stuff like that. That this was
Yeah.
different than this was different than the Royal Guardsmen. There's something else. There's something happening here that's very different from what you would expect, and it really showed up when they started getting into things like Revolver and and then obviously to Sergeant Pepper's where it became full blown. But before that, you and it was interesting too to me always that the British always had this because they had musicians unions. So they had to use a certain amount of musicians on a record. So
Also, if you wanted to call in, I don't know who the guys were, probably their names are written down somewhere, who played in Beatles string sections, who were the Beatles string quartet, who played the mini trumpets and the horn sections that they used for all their color and their transitions, bringing back exactly the type of guy we're talking about with Nelson Riddle, bringing back an arranger to bring a mood, to enforce the lyric with certain musical spice, to create an image and an oral situation, and to take nobody considered the fact that string sections would sound psychedelic, that string sections would sound modern and futuristic when played when played in a certain way, in a certain atmosphere with a certain song, like A Day in the Life.
right, you had to have a certain amount of vision and imagination to put that not only on tape, but to take it from one little spot in your brain and then explain it to the people who were going to sing it, the people who
Right.
were going to play it, and then make it actually all come out as you're envisioning it in your brain. Not an easy thing to do, Michael. I mean, it's
No,
not,
especially because you know how many times you envision something and it comes out different. Well, that's not the way I had it in mind. What I like it, but I didn't think it was going to come out that way.
right.
And the Beatles were famous for keeping mistakes. Oop, big clam in the middle of that one. Yeah, how can we keep that?
Well, and it was interesting because one of the things in reading a lot of the biographies and books about Springsteen, that's the one of the things that he brought with him into the studio is he had, he often cites the Beatles as such
Right.
an influence on. Well, it wasn't just their vocals that influenced him, but it was the construction of the records
Yes.
and the construction of the songs that getting what's rolling around in your knot to be on the tape so that when you listen to it, it is what you had in your mind. And
Like the way they did so many of his albums using Roy Orbison as a model, trying to get Roy Orbison's mood, trying to get that simple orchestration, trying to get the big sound, trying to isolate the voice, all the things that Roy did to create these really emotional records. Bruce wanted to play with your emotions too, and his own.
Right. You know, it's funny you bring up Roy Orbison because that's really, um, that was, and people didn't realize it. I think in many quarters, because you didn't get it um, from listening to the 3-inch speaker with WABC.
No,
But when FM radio came along
look
in
out.
1968, 69, and they started putting that music onto FM signals that had stereo where you could hear the depth of what was going on. It really changed the game. It really flipped the game around because now you were not only listening I mean, think about the first time you heard crying on a little radio speaker and then heard it
KEWB.
in stereo,
Right.
with the full breadth of Orbison's voice and the arrangement and what he could do with that incredible instrument that he was given. I mean, you never heard a human sing like that before,
No.
did you?
And credit to the guys who put together his records because those all were done down in Nashville. And Roy was not making Nashville records. He was, as he always did, making his own kind of record.
He
What
was
kind of
making
record
Roy
is that?
Orbison records, man.
And they were different from everybody else's, just like Astor Gilberto was different from everyone else.
Yeah, it's just those different those marks in music that you sometimes say to yourself, well, why did I get hooked into that? Why was that song so popular? And if you could cross over and have a popular song like that, um, with the largest amount of your audience being very unsophisticated, just realizing,
Right.
hey, this sounds good.
Right.
I don't care that it's got a 3-part harmony here and a 2-part harmony here and a one. I mean, I know that when I listen to it, it sounds different and
Then,
better
yeah,
than most of the other stuff coming out of the speaker.
true enough.
Yeah,
While we're talking about show business for a bit, there's a couple notes that have to be mentioned. One, SAG-AFTRA has authorized a strike to go along with the writers' strike. That means all the actors in radio and television, and in some cases film, will be prepared to go to strike on the 30th of this month. So enjoy what you're enjoying because now there's a strike to join a strike. And as for the writers' strike, which started this going, by the way, the Directors Guild, meanwhile, did make a deal with the studios, but that's the only deal that got going. And the SAG-AFTRA joining of the Writers Guild strike could be pretty damning because nobody is talking to the writers. The studios have shut them out. There are no negotiations going on. It's been over a month. Nobody's talking. Nobody's trading comments. Nobody's press releasing, and the pressure's on.
yeah.
So this is a traditional Hollywood studio response. We've given you our first, best, and last offer. Return to
And
work.
I mean, what do they think that they're going to get AI to write this stuff? That they're going to get? I mean, where do they think this stuff is going to come from?
Well, the comment from the head of the Writers Guild negotiations this week was that the studios are going to film everything they've got, every script, every page of every script that they have in their possession, and when they're done with that, maybe they'll think about how long they can last with the current profit margin the way it is, and they're taking shots directly at the executive suite salaries compared to the writer salaries and where all the money is really being spent.
Well, listen, I think it's as in so much business these days. You have a few people at the top who are making,
Portions.
phenomenal amounts of money, whether they screw up or not. And then you have the people who are actually doing the work, the writing and the performing and the other stuff, making what sounds to you and me like, oh my God, they should be thankful for what they have. But when you look at the division of the fruits of everybody's labor, it's almost obscene what writers and actors get compared to executives.
And the idea that you have steady work at a certain level is not the way it goes. It goes project to project. You work from one element of the show business tree to the other, and you hope that you can string them together. But that's not always the way it works for
Right.
actors or for writers.
And also, much the same as an athlete, many times a writer or a script writer or uh, any type of writer that does that kind of stuff only has a certain shelf life. It's not like you get this job and you go in 20 years, 25 years. Sometimes, if you're like a Sherwood Schwartz, you get lucky. If you're, a Larry Gelbart, you get lucky. Some of those different people who have gotten lucky and had 2 or 3 or 4 different shows that have been successful. And so their careers have been, set. But there are many writers out there who, maybe they get two series or they write for 2 or 3 series and then they don't write much anymore. Or it's 10 years before they get something else because it is a business that is not a business where you go down and fill out an application and get a job.
Nope, it's who you know and how you know them.
It's who you know and who you haven't pissed off and who you haven't, there's just so much that goes into it. That's why you see people with no ability that get screenwriting credits and great writers who can't get credit to save their life because they PO'd somebody off in the studio somewhere.
Speaking of no talent, the man who launched the Morning Joe on MSNBC and then went to revitalize CBS This Morning, went to CNN and found out how many people actually hate him on this planet, was relieved of his duties today. Chris Licht, who was the subject of a 15,000-word expose in Atlantic Monthly that finished him off. His quotes, his observations.
1,000 words about somebody.
The writer spent days with him. And the theory was all these changes were coming to CNN. Let's write a story not about CNN. Let's write the story about the changes in the man who brought them. And in doing so, the writer from the Atlantic discovered that the people at CNN hated this guy. That every move that he made turned up mud, including moving Don Lemon to mornings.
Yeah, it was,
and his thing with Donald Trump was the last straw.
Well, yeah, that was one of the most ridiculous. When I saw that, I said the person who allowed this to go on the air should be fired.
He was,
who allowed this to go the way it did. There seems to be this perception at CNN from what you read and what, you can go on Facebook and look at some of the CNN alumni groups and things like that, people that have been there. There's no Bernard Shaw at CNN anymore. There's nobody who carries that kind of weight, who can look at...
Will Pulitzer's still there, but he never carried that kind of weight.
Well, he doesn't carry that kind of weight, it just more and more seemed like that people felt that Licht wasn't going to, that he wasn't going to fight for them, that he wasn't going to. That he had a wrong direction. Listen, you're not going to steal viewers from Fox unless you do Fox.
And he tried a little of that. That's what he was trying a little of.
Well, yeah, he tried it, but you see, you got to go one or two ways, Michael. I think. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a news guy in the sense of I know how to program this kind of stuff, but you either have to do like Fox and come down wholly on the side of a point of view or a philosophy and stick with that and go with it and make that audience your own, or you have to go BlackRock CBS, which is it's the news, it's no opinion. When it's an opinion or when it's something that your anchor feels is that important, that it is something that people 50 and 60 and 70 years later will be looking at on some source and saying, my God, look at Walter Cronkite take his glasses off after he announces that the president is dead. It's such an emotional, it's such a benchmark when Douglas Edwards or Robert Trout or Walter Cronkite or one of those CBS mainstays of the 60s get emotional about a story because you don't. You're impartially reading the news. And when that happens, it's supposed to be something memorable. And with Lick, it didn't seem like, it just seemed like he was trying to go after a group of people that he wasn't going to get.
He was uncareful and apparently thought himself faultless and realized that only after the fact that the article had done great damage to CNN and him personally, and said, "I'm so sorry about that. I really fight to get your respect back." Well, you didn't fight at all to lose the respect. You were happy about it. You went chin first into the world where you lost your respect. And so, as I always say in these times, Vinny, fire that guy, but find out who hired him, who brought him in and caused all this damage, who brought him in and gave him a big salary and unfettered power, who allowed him to make those mistakes with Donald Trump and the anchors and Don Lemon and all the internal downsize and horrible feelings between employees that could have been avoided without him. Who hired that guy to come in and cause all that trouble? Find that guy, and he has to go too.
And as we've discussed many times on this show, because it's happened to both of us, is somebody comes in, they're trying to make a name for themselves. They're trying to show that they're the boss. So they wind up firing or getting rid of or reducing in power anybody who has any kind of heaviness at the station.
Get rid of the morning guy. Get rid of the morning guy is a
They're
good
afraid.
way.
They're afraid that he may have the ear of the general manager or the program executive or the corporate program director or whatever it is. And we've seen it several times over our career. And then 3 months later, that guy gets fired. And, but not after he's ruined the careers or lives of several people.
Half of them he fired, and the other half he reassigned or misused or another way turned them off to the industry, made them leave, get another job, go across town, bees competition, all the terrible things that happen with bad leadership.
And people that you might not have ever had a chance to get if you were a competitor. I mean, I watched this morning. I don't know if you know Anna Cabrera, anchor she's on MSNBC now. She used to do the top show in this time slot on CNN. Now, I don't think she's the greatest anchor in the world, but you know what? She was competent. She knew how to use the language. She had good writers, and she came off as fairly unbiased to one side or the other. She was one of the few people at CNN, I thought, that really just delivered the news.
But they didn't want her.
And in a pleasant way, in a way that was relatable. Plus, she was good to look at. She was, she had what you really kind of want in an anchor. Good to look at, accessible, clearly delivered news without perceived bias. And they got rid of her. And they, and they put, I don't know, 3 other people in there whose main talent seems to be walking around the set without bumping into each other.
I'm going to walk over here, you walk over there. Who's going to talk? I'm going to talk a little bit, then you talk a little bit.
Well, that's exactly what it is, Michael. It's like that crap they had on Cairo here so many years ago, that out of the box, where they everybody was running around the set, trying to get out of each other's way. Well, look out! Here comes Wayne Cody. Get out of the way, bro. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's funny because as a viewer, and yes, I consume a lot of news, but as a viewer, I looked at and every time they were starting with a spot break, I said to myself, where are these people going?
Why are they up? Well, they don't go anywhere and do anything. They're just up and moving.
They seem to always be in a rush to get somewhere.
It's like the car commercial where everybody talking to you is looking at you, but they're walking somewhere else. Walk, 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 walk. we're at the car place. We're getting the thing. It's the big silence on right now. I can't stop to tell any more about it. Quick, come over here. Look at this car. No, this one. I'm walking this way, and I'm showing you this car. Come by today and put no money down. No money down. But quick, don't stop moving. Be a moving target. Quick, this way. Follow me. Follow camera.
Yeah, it's really so for me, for my I don't know, for as a consumer of news, I I looked at it as it all just looks like a big train wreck to me.
I saw,
Nobody
I
looks
saw,
happy.
I saw, noticed, and perceived an editorial change that came to CNN that was coming with more the way they would break up their. They do a story, then they have three people discuss the story. Now suddenly they have somebody in there who thinks the story is hoax. That never happened, and it never happened. And the president, and when I say the president, I mean Donald Trump, would never have said that. And if they said he said it, and if they have tape of saying it, it's because he didn't say it. He would have never have said that.
Well, and I think part of also what happened, Michael, is that even though CNN probably started that trend of having three people sit there and tell you about the story, there was always a perception, and it always felt like they knew what they were talking about to a certain degree. I mean, you had David Axelrod talking about politics. You had I don't know, name some of these people that were on, former Secretary of Homeland Security, former this, former that, but they seem to have had experience in the job.
Right.
They seem to have done it so they can at least give you some of the inside leaning machinations of how this all works. So it would give you some kind of person's perspective, not just um, somebody talking. And lately, over the past 6 months, 8 months, it seemed like they were just sticking people in those seats because they thought that they might have appealed to the audience.
You're talking about CNN?
CNN, yeah. I heard. Again, he's turned into my kind of favorite whipping boy on CNN. Berman this morning, who I don't think would be a news anchor on almost any station, local station in the United States. Never mind an outfit like CNN. I heard him questioning a former federal prosecutor, and his question to the former federal prosecutor was, "Well, how will we know when the indictment comes? How will we know when all of this happens? How will
It's
we know?"
it's announced, you ignorant wretch.
Well, listen, if you don't know how you're going to know, then you're
You're the
really in
wrong
trouble.
guy.
They sent out a press release like they do with everything else.
Hey, he might be in trouble if it weren't for the people around him. God knows what he would say if he were given left to his own devices.
I just think the guy, again, I hate to pick on one person because he's not the worst person there, but I don't, I don't understand the redundant and idiotic questioning. They don't question
I
people.
want to know why. I want to know why producers don't give the anchor 5 questions that relate to the guest, because they get a super qualified expert on the panel, and they have nothing sensible to ask them. When did this take place? How is this done? How's the work done? When does it complete? What happened when you were in office? What did you say about China?
Yeah,
By the way, I think about our Secretary of State going to China is a good deal. I think diffuse their go back to being our business partner and stop with all the bullshit. This is useless. It's not going anywhere. Stop doing that stuff, and we'll stop doing something that you want us to stop doing. What do you want
yeah.
us to stop doing? Come on, let's trade here. You
Well,
want to go? You don't want to go to war. Look at your pal Vladimir. Look at the hot water he's in. He's in the last days of his rule. He can't sustain this. The people of Russia will not go along with it. The people around him are dangerous. The Wagner Group is working on its own with its own finances to do what they want. Sometimes shooting at the Ukrainians, sometimes shooting at the Russians. If they don't like what's happening in Moscow, they're going to come and shoot at you. If that's the future you want, then go the way that Vladimir's going. But if you want to be in business like a good Chinese premier should be, let's make a deal. Let's talk. Let's have regular meetings. But this bullshit with the planes and the boats, come on. You're better than that. Stop it.
Yeah, it's and again, you have a core of people who jump into almost what you would call scare tactics. It sells to tell people that the Chinese could be attacking us at any minute.
So
Well,
could the Bolivians.
why would the Chinese attack their largest customer? It's like if you owned an ice cream shop and somebody walked in and ordered chocolate and you jumped over the counter and punched him because you didn't like them ordering chocolate. I mean, give me some better perspective than that. Give me something more. Listen, again, I don't claim to be a, world affairs bright light bulb. I claim to know how to talk about things and have a conversation. That I'll tell you, and it just doesn't figure to me. But yet, if CNN goes on the air and now the dearly departed Chris Lick goes on the air and says, well, that's they'll work it out. Don't worry. Hang on. It's like the debt ceiling.
Yeah.
You knew it was going to get worked out. You knew that they couldn't let the country go into default.
Although there were those who wanted that.
Certainly Warren stated it so on CNN's air.
Yes.
Because there are certain politicians who believe that chaos is the way that you rule. If
everything in this country is chaotic and unusable and ridiculous and broken, you can't keep track of what I'm doing. What I'm doing is putting together a little fortune for my family. So when everything straightens itself out, I'll be all right, Jake, and you won't. You should have been watching me. I told you to watch Tommy
Powell Boulevard.
Keep your eye on Tommy Tuberville is what I said, but no, you had better things to do. You had to. By the way, if you are driving a car while someone in the back seat commits a murder, you are part of that murder and you're charged with murder. But if you're a golf pro and your boss commits the murder, are you complicit? Are you part of that action? Can you be arrested and charged for murder too? Because Aman Khashoggi was cut into small, manageable pieces by the Saudi people who run the golf tournaments now for the PGA. I just want to know all those golfers. Is Phil Mickelson complicit in the murder of Khashoggi, and is he responsible for his death and any death that comes at the hands of the Saudis from now on?
Well, and by natural extension, you could take that to, the 4,000 or 3,800. I forget what the exact number is. 3,800 people that died at the World Trade Center and in the Pentagon. And
we were kind of hoping we were past.
Pennsylvania.
I thought we were past all that. Is what the PGA said. I thought
that's what Tucker Carlson would like you to believe.
We'd like to put that behind us.
Yeah. That's what these guys would like you to believe, that our best deal is to jump into bed with these guys, and our lives will be substantially improved, except if you're Ahmad Khashoggi's girlfriend.
Also, if Tiger Woods likes to get frisky and do the wrong thing, he too can be chopped into easily manageable pieces for disposal at another time.
Well, send somebody out for your family. We have no problem doing that. I mean, look at what we did with Adnan.
We do it. We do it, and we do it, and we do it.
We do it. No, I think it's. I mean, I'm surprised that they didn't release that news at like 9:00 on a Friday night.
They're proud of it. The PGA said, "What a deal! What a deal we pulled off."
Well, listen, this is an organization. Again, I hate to always keep reminding people about this, but you couldn't. I mean, you want to talk about. Everybody likes to point their finger toward baseball as a racist organization. But crap, you couldn't even get onto a course to watch the damn Masters if you were black up until how many years ago?
Even if you wore silly pants with flamingos on them.
Yeah. I mean, it was great to have, a black golfer around at the clubhouse, but don't let them out on the greens. They'll melt the stuff.
Give him $5, he'll put your bag and your shoes in your trunk of your car.
I mean, so I don't know that. Listen, the only thing that counts to any of these, and again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, always remember and don't ever forget that the only thing that counts to these sports leagues are money. Is money. That's it. That's all they don't care about anything else. If they think if the PGA thought that people's memories would last more than a news cycle, that if sponsors en masse were going to pull out of the PGA Tour because they didn't agree with what the PGA was doing with Live Golf, then it wouldn't happen. But they're in essence saying, listen, in 6 months, nobody's going to remember this.
That's what they're saying. That's what they believe.
In 6 months, nobody's gonna remember that we merged, that we took these people back, that people had stood up on principle and said, I'm not going to go join an organization that is responsible for murdering reporters.
And imagine the PGA saying to their own golfers, Vinny, the people who stood with them, as you said, the people who said nope, loyalty and good thoughts over all this crapola. The PGA just looks at them and says, "You guys were suckers. You fell for that business. You actually believe all that?
Serious?
You think we were just getting the money right? You knew we were going to cave in all the way." By the way, speaking of getting the money right, the Nevada Senate and legislature adjourned for the season without giving the Oakland A's their $400 million. They didn't even vote on it. They just let it slide. So the Oakland A's, the Las Vegas A's, I'm sorry, will relocate to Oakland at a minute's notice. They're back. Hey, you thought we were going? You thought you fell for that? No way. Here's what we're doing. We've just been purchased by the Saudi Arabian Baseball League. And I think it's going to work out beautifully for everybody.
Wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if I mean, and that's going to be interesting when we watch that, because I'm sure you remember the hubbub that was going on when oh my God, the Japanese wanted to purchase a majority interest in the Seattle Mariners.
Not on my watch. No way. No, their money was no good.
And Willie Mays was suspended from baseball for being associated with a casino.
Yeah, right. Imagine such a day. Live from Bally Sports. Hey, Bally Sports, by the way, decided to blow their baseball television contract with the San Diego Padres and give the rights back to the Major League Baseball. So they took them to court, and the court said, you made a deal with the Padres. You owe them a season of baseball. You do not get to back out. Provide the money or return the cash or start the broadcast now. Valley Sports in San Diego, regional sports delivery of the San Diego Padres, just shuttered up their business and gave the baseball rights back to the Major League Baseball with no notice whatsoever to the people who were paying them their cable fees.
Well, there's so many. I mean, I've been actually reading a lot about this. It's happened in a number. It's not just Valley Sports. It's not just, they took over all of what used to be these Fox regional sports networks that,
right.
Fox was going to make this great. They were going to compete with ESPN.
It was owned by Sinclair, right?
I think so. Yeah, I forget now if they're owned. But I know Sinclair has a piece of it. I don't know if it's the majority. And oddly enough, the one here, Root Sports here, is exempt from that because they are owned by the Seattle Mariners.
Aha.
The majority, just like I believe. Well, I don't know. I don't believe that because I don't know. I know there was a bunch of ownership changes down in Oakland and in San Francisco, so that some of the stuff goes on cable, some of the stuff doesn't go on cable. You have that Bay Area sports, that was.
I think that was NBC. Yes. Right.
NBC Sports Bay Area. Another person said, "Well, we're going to take on ESPN,
ESPN.
and we're going to beat them at their own game." And nobody seems to have been able to do anything close to that. Meanwhile, baseball fans in San Diego and Los Angeles and several places don't get games, but
Right.
fear not, because if you want the games badly enough, you can get them.
Right.
You just have to be crafty. You have to have a VPN, and you have to sign up for the major league ticket. Although that now is will go over to YouTube, like the football packages. So you're going to have to buy a premium YouTube subscription to get that kind of stuff as well. So you're going to pay for your sports no matter what. Within 10 years, Sunday afternoon, turning on the TV and sitting there with the kids watching football,
Forgot about it.
it ain't going to happen anymore. You're going to have to pay somebody to watch
Something.
football,
Yeah.
or baseball, or basketball, or hockey.
Now, what about the networks that have a golf contract right now? And suddenly they're going to take the most hated and vicious ownership and compliant sports maniacs and put them on the air and whisper while they do their work. Standing at the 18th hole, poised with a machete, there goes the hand. Was that the left hand? That was the right hand. He still has to take the left hand off. These must be small, manageable pieces. There goes. There's another. Yes, there goes the forearm. That's good. That's good.
I hate to laugh about it, but it's the truth. But listen, the bottom line is, Michael, you know as well as I do, that sports fans, as long as they get their sports one way or the other,
They don't care.
they don't care. There's a very small percentage of sports fans who will say, "I will not watch golf because they don't allow, I don't know, because of the Saudi thing, or they don't allow black people to play, or they don't do this, or they don't do that." It's not an appreciable amount of people.
If you love golf, you'll just learn. You have to learn to put up with it. You have to learn to be miserable and deal with that small and unmanageable ball.
Well, that's why it surprised me so much when, what was it, 2 years ago, that Major League Baseball pulled the All-Star game out of Atlanta.
Never do
Remember,
that
they moved it
again.
over to Colorado because
Right.
Georgia had that ridiculous voting rights
Correct.
law, and we don't want, no, we're going to do this in protest. Great. Did it change anything? No. Did anybody remember, besides Vinnie in Seattle and Mikey in Los Angeles, that
Well, it did cost Atlanta probably $80 to $100 million in financial footprint that they did not participate in because it was moved.
but you know what? It was absorbed. It was absorbed because you have so many studios and everybody moving to Atlanta, because they're trying to become the new Hollywood. And
Well, they have two Democrat senators. It's
yeah,
a very interesting state in terms of how it's changing. It's one of the more interesting states, more interesting than Texas, because as much as Texas changes, it remains the same. What's interesting about Georgia, it's changing, and it's changing dramatically. To have a black and a Jewish senator that are both Democrats out of Georgia is a remarkable.
It is pretty wild when you think about it.
Yeah,
And the fact that they didn't vote Herschel Walker in.
Show some good sense at long last. You boys are all right down there.
Not everybody is asleep at the wheel, as opposed to Alabama, that just heard the football coach's name and clicked down on the thing in the voting booth. But
I think what we learned today about CNN and about PGA golf is what you do does matter. People do remember. There are penalties to pay for wrong behavior. Chris Lick, you did the wrong thing. Are you a good guy or a bad guy? Well, you were willing to do the wrong thing in a huge national stage. So I just have to say, you're not a good guy. You're on my dog list for now. As for the PGA, is there any question about a good guy or bad guy? About was this right or was this on the wrong? Is anybody on the fence about their decision?
I'm surprised, to be honest with you. I'm surprised that any sports anchor, or any anchor for that matter, would go on and talk about, or you know participate in anything with Live Golf. I mean, they killed a reporter. It's not like they killed the garbage man. If you killed the garbage man in New York, all the other garbage men would walk out.
But after you killed him, did you chop him into small, manageable pieces?
Yes, and
Okay.
that's how it should be done. We don't want to hurt any of our garbage men that are working. See, that's the thing to me, is everybody wants to talk about it and go on CNN and go, I see, what did I see yesterday? Bob Costas, and I saw this guy and that woman, and the woman from the Boston Globe, was it Jackie McMullen? I forgot.
Right,
They were
exactly.
like cockroaches when a light went on. Everybody was scrambling to talk about it. But nobody didn't say, I don't want to talk to you because this was a reporter that got killed. And so I'm not going to
Did
accept the money
the
of.
sports people even see that angle, that this was the result of murdering swine?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, they talked about it, but they didn't say. At least you had some golfers who stood up and said, "I'm not going to play on that tour, or I'm not going to take that money, or I'm not going to do this." The media, under the guise of "we have to cover it,"
Yeah, right.
took the checks from that they were handing out to come on the show, or the notoriety, or whatever it is that they get out of it, the personal goosing of massaging of their egos, that they can walk into a bar that night and say, "Oh, hey, Sally, I saw you on CNN today.
Can't remember what it was about. The sound was down. You look good.
You look good. We were sitting there drinking. I like your new freckles. They look good." These people, the Saudis should be pariahs, man. They should be. I mean, nobody in the media should be talking to these people. They should have to buy ads to get any kind of.
And the reason they didn't put all their money in Formula One or soccer is because that's not an American sport. That's not an American. There aren't American athletes. It's not American audience. They wanted to buy an American product. They wanted to own it
Right.
outright and to use its image to improve their own.
It's very much the same as what the Chinese do with brands. The Chinese own Maytag. The Chinese own Whirlpool. The Chinese own Frigidaire, because they know that these brands strike a bell with the American public.
My
There's a
mom always had a
credibility.
Frigidaire. She would swear by the Frigidaire. She said it would last forever, wear like iron.
Yeah, yeah. And so it's why they bought IBM. They bought IBM not because they wanted the computers. They bought IBM because they wanted the name.
International business machines. Well, okay.
Right.
When you
Even
put
though
it
they
when you put it that way.
Novo, at some point, they still wanted that to be able to say this is an IBM computer,
Says so right on the computer. Pretty
because
obvious.
there was a expectation of quality
Right.
that would have taken the Chinese years to build up. And frankly, with some of the stuff you see coming out of there, they probably would have never been able to get there.
The funny thing about the Chinese, and I don't understand this, is why they steal technology instead of develop it. They steal your technology and re-engineer it just as you did, but they don't come up with a product of their own that's an advancement beyond it. They don't come up with their own. They're making iPhones. Why don't they advance and do the next, be it iPhone 14, iPhone 15, and chase Apple for the market? They don't
Well,
develop. I don't understand why they don't develop new technology on their own.
I think part of it is, I don't, again, I don't know this for a fact. I'd have to, study it a little bit more. But my sense is that part of it is that nobody trusts them.
Yeah.
Is that if you put I mean, can you buy what is it, Huawei phone in the United States?
I don't think. Well, maybe. I
No,
don't know.
no, because the United States Federal Trade Commission doesn't trust the Chinese to put a little thing in that phone that tells you where people are all over
We
the
call it
place.
we call it the downtown monitor. Wherever you go, we can just figure
Wherever
out
you
where you're
go,
going, and we can hear what you're saying.
and if your name is Mark Milley and you buy one of our phones,
Hello, hello,
we turn the
General.
juice on a little hotter so we know where you are all the time.
Good morning.
I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, it's so it makes it virtually impossible because there's not a trust there between the Chinese brand and the American people. You can't trust that it's going to be a good product, and you can't trust that it's going to be a product that's not going to monitor you. That's
But you
not
can
going to
you always know something with the Chinese, and it's fascinating because
right. It's the same thing with TikTok.
it's the Communist Party that you're dealing with. You're not dealing with China as a nation.
Right, right.
You're not dealing with businessmen as individual corporations. The Chinese army, the Chinese party owns everything, independent of the country, separate and apart in another lane from the country.
Right.
And the party is the most important part. The chairman of the party runs the country. The country is secondary to the party itself. And
Right.
so consequently, if you're in business, you may be in business with Vinnie Richichi Productions of Shanghai, but it's owned by the army, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, but you're in business with the Chinese government, and if we have seen anything in life, is that life, of a human being, is nothing but a commodity to the Chinese. There's no to again, and I'll go because you bring up a good point. Not so much the Chinese as in Chinese people, but the Chinese as in the Chinese government.
And the
It's
funny
like
thing about the
Russia.
party is you say it's a party. Are you guys having fun? No, it
It
ain't
doesn't
that kind
look
of
like it.
party.
It
It's
doesn't
not that
look
kind.
like.
No. It's a
But
different kind of
it
party.
was during the full tilt boogie days of COVID. I always used to laugh because people say, "Well, I don't want to wear a mask in Home Depot." Well, if you were in Home Depot in China, you would need a mask because they put a bullet in your head and they say, "See what happens when you don't wear a mask." And
And
everybody
charge,
gets out their masks and they put them on.
and then they charge the family 38 cents for the bullet.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So there's no we're going to go this way, we're going to go that way. No, 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 no. This is how it is. You don't put the mask on, we'll put one in your head. And
Well,
then you
Vinny,
won't need the mask anymore.
this has been such a jam-packed show that there's only one thing that can make this all irrelevant. And that is by the time we get off the air, there'll be another major story that breaks that puts the Pope in the hospital and Chris Licht on the sidewalk and the PGA in a murderous swine handshake with the Saudis, all on the side. Even Mike Pence, and I just want to say, hang Mike Pence if you haven't heard that today. I always say it once a day. He's
Hang
running for
Mike.
president, and but remember, if you're going to vote for him or if he should be elected, hang Mike Pence. And you can hang him by his thumbs, you can hang him by his ankles. It's a free for all.
Which we'll go back to about the halfway point in our show when we said people don't remember. People forget real easily. I mean, how in the world? Yeah, yeah.
How in the world?
How in the world? I mean, how does any of this happen? How does Chris Christie think that he has an actual chance?
I like his
Without a-
campaigning. I like his delivery. It's very Saturday Night Live, Chris Christie. He's
Yeah,
found a sense of humor about this. He said, "We were idiots, we were fools, but I forgive you. Now vote for me."
he's an interesting cat. I don't think he's going to go anywhere.
No.
But you know what? If he has the nuts to stand up to Trump and say what he knows and be
Could be.
honest about it, it could be a refreshing gust of wind.
Yeah.
In this race that is quickly. I mean, again, you just don't seem to have anybody. Well, you've got a couple of people now that are willing to look at Trump and say, "Well, I don't think that this guy should be president again." Not because he's incompetent, but because he's incompetent.
You know what I get to do this morning? I get to take Kristen to her hair appointment. So I must say, yes, she's getting her hair did. So I must say a fond farewell to the Pope, to Chris Lick, to my best friend, Vinnie Richichi, and to all our watchers and listeners. Enjoyed being with you this morning. It was a jam-packed show.
Yeah, we didn't even get started yet. We didn't even introduce ourselves. He's Michael Knight down in Pasadena, California, home of the car chase.
He's Astor Gilberto, and he's in Bahia Beach right now, walking to. He looks straight ahead, but not at me.
Right, we'll catch up with you for a Freaky Friday on Friday morning at 10:10. If the Lord's willing, the creek don't rise.
See if we don't. What a wine. See you, Vin.
Peace, love, and Manischewitz, baby. Thank you all for listening. See you on Friday.